All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We are glad you are here with us this morning to spend some time learning about the data profile that will support your agency's diligent recruitment efforts. I'm Laura Phipps, and we're going to go ahead and get started with our overview and introductions. So as always, this webinar was developed through funding from the North Carolina Division of Social Services and developed by the Family and Children's Resource Program, and we are part of the Jordan Institute for Families at the UNC Chapel Hill School of Social Work. And with all of our webinars in the near future, there will be a recording of this webinar available on NCSW Learn. So if you know folks who were not able to attend this morning, they will be able to listen to the recording in the very near future. So our goals for this webinar is to make sure that you understand the new data profile. So we want you to be able to describe it to other people. We would hope that you'll be able to explain what is expected of agencies when it comes to the recruitment data profile and program planning tool, and you will hear us use both of those terms. So you might hear us say data profile and program planning tool, and we are talking about the same thing. And we also would like you to be able to apply strategies for obtaining and using that data to inform your recruitment and retention of resource families. So as I can see, most of you are very comfortable using the chat pod to communicate with us. So please type questions. I'm going to talk about questions in a minute. Into the chat pod if you have them. If you're having specific problems that you would like to chat to one of us directly, you'll see that you can chat to hosts. You can also hover over one of our names and chat privately. So there will be somebody here to help you if you're having some technical problems. But if you're in the general chat pod, then everyone will be able to see what you're saying, and we can also address any questions you may have. So let's talk a little bit about questions. When we have these webinars, we often have a lot of folks on the line with us, and we want to do our best to answer your questions as much as we possibly can, while also making sure that we can get through the content in a timely manner. So what we'll be doing is pausing a few different times throughout the webinar to offer you an opportunity to ask questions about the material that was just covered. In addition, we'll be monitoring those questions throughout the webinar and trying to keep track of themes that come up, and then we'll make sure to answer some of those common questions if we have time at the end. We also will be doing a follow-up document that will answer the most commonly asked questions during the webinar, and that will be emailed out to anyone who is registered, and it will also be posted when we post the webinar recording. And as we said, the webinar recording in the near future will be available both on NCSW Learn, and it will also be on our Family and Children's Resource Program webpage. So you'll have two different ways to access that information. The other way you can communicate with us is to use the icons to get our attention. You can see up at the top above the slides, there is an icon of a person with a hand raised. If you click on the arrow next to that icon, you'll see some various options that you can let us know if you need us to speed up or slow down, or if you want to comment using the icons. It's another way, especially when we have a lot of people on the line, to communicate with us easily. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do our introductions. As I said, my name is Laura Phipps, and I'll be your moderator this morning. I work for the Family and Children's Resource Program, and I see lots of familiar names on our list of attendees, so I'm glad to see you all here, and welcome. Many of you have been in the classroom with me or on a training online, and I do a lot of different things here at the Family and Children's Resource Program. I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves, and we're going to start with Jamie.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jamie Bazemore, and I'm the Program Manager for the Adoption Services team at the North Carolina Division of Social Services. I've been in this role for about 4 years, and prior to that, I was an Adoption and Licensing Supervisor and Line Worker in the counties. So I'm excited to talk today about how we can use data to drive our day-to-day work in diligent recruitment and retention of foster and adoptive parents.
Hi, folks. My name is Destro, and I'm one of the data analysts with the Child Welfare section at NCDSS. I've been working there since January, and I will present a little bit later on about some more technical aspects of how you can populate your data profile program planning tool. So I'll be speaking with you in just a bit.
All right, I can see already in the chat pod that a couple of you are having some questions about audio issues, so I will just emphasize that we have Philip Armfeld here in the room with us, who can certainly address any technical issues that you're having. And also we have John McMahon online, and he'll be helping us in the background, monitoring questions and keeping track of making sure we get your questions answered. So please, like I said, if you're having any issues with technology, you can type to Philip in the chat pod and he'll do his best to help you. All right, so before we get started this morning, we wanted to do one quick poll, and I think John's going to bring that poll over for us so you can see it. So there was a webinar in June of this year that was an overview of the Diligent Recruitment and Retention Plan, and we wanted to get a sense of how many of you attended that webinar, just so we can see what the base of knowledge is that we're starting with here in this particular webinar. So please go ahead and choose if you did or did not attend, and we'll take a look and see what we're looking at. All right, great. Thank you all for doing that. So we have about 50% of you did attend that webinar, so that's fantastic. In a moment, Jamie's going to review some of the stuff that was covered in that webinar, but I know she'll emphasize that that's a good place to start with the recording of that webinar if you have not attended it already. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Jamie, and then we'll be back in a minute.
All right, good morning again, everyone. So as Laura shared, we'd like to start with a brief overview of our statewide diligent recruitment retention plan. I do want to keep this overview relatively short and high level because we did that thorough and comprehensive webinar on the plan back in June 2017. So you'll hear it multiple times today, but if you haven't viewed that, that would really be a great place to start. Whereas today, what we really want to focus on is a deep dive into the data profile program planning tool. All right, so North Carolina's new and improved Diligent Recruitment and Retention Plan was a direct result of our Child and Family Services review results and was really written as a strategy to address a specific goal within our program improvement plan. And that goal and strategy is to strengthen cross-system service provision by strengthening and reframing the state's Diligent Recruitment Plan. Historically, our plan was really a list of activities with no strategic approach to that work. And so what we wanted to do was to flip that approach and have a strategic approach that really informed our day-to-day activities at the state and local level. So it was extremely important when we developed the plan itself to determine exactly what our foundational beliefs are as a state when it comes to diligent recruitment and retention. And so through the input of stakeholders, county DSSs, and private agencies, we established these 4 core beliefs, which are outlined here. The first being that we value all prospective current and former foster and adoptive parents. The second, that we value all caregivers, including kinships, and also encourage the licensure of kinship placements whenever possible, including using licensure waivers if that's appropriate. That we provide and value opportunities for support, engagement, and training of foster adoptive and kinship families. And then central to today's discussion is our 4th belief, that we have an obligation to build our capacity to utilize data to inform diligent recruitment and retention. So once we outlined our beliefs, we then wanted to look at our vision for the future as a state and what we'd like to see happen across the state long term. Ultimately, what we desire to see is an increase in engagement in TA, information sharing, and collaboration between the North Carolina Division of Social Services, county DSSs, and of course private agencies. The second is that we'd like to see an increased customer service approach to diligent recruitment and retention, where we also garner positive feedback from our foster and adoptive families. That we'd like to see increased involvement of foster and adoptive parents and youth in foster care or previously in foster care in the process of diligent recruitment and retention. And then lastly, and central to today, is that we want to see an increased data-driven diligent recruitment and retention approach that's really focused on capacity building regarding the collection, accessibility, and then interpretation of our data. All right, so there are some basic new expectations for both public and private agencies included in the Diligent Recruitment Plan. Each county's Diligent Recruitment and Retention Plan is also going to serve as their MEPA plan and will be due to the state annually going forward. We provided a plan template and a resource guide that should assist in the completion of each county's plan. And then both public and private agencies are required to complete the Data Profile Program Planning tool, ultimately to inform their diligent recruitment plan and the work that they're doing. And that'll be turned in annually as well. So plans or deadlines for completion of the plans. In the plan's first year, what we did is divided the counties up into two separate phases for completion. The first year plans are due, the first phase plans are due February 1st, 2018, and then phase 2 counties are due May 1st, 2018, both ultimately with implementation dates of July 1st, 2018. And then going forward, beginning in 2019, plans are going to be due each year on September 1st. And if you're unsure of which phase you're in, I would encourage you to go listen to the original webinar and then also to review the Diligent Recruitment and Retention Plan because it lays out exactly which counties are in phase 1 and which are in phase 2. All right, so the role of the private agencies. So private foster care agencies are required to submit the annual data profile, and that's basically a mechanism for us to really get a true statewide perspective on diligent recruitment and retention. And when I say us, I don't necessarily just mean the Division of Social Services. I mean all of us universally, locally, stakeholders, private and public agencies, as well as state staff. At this time, private agencies are not required to submit a recruitment plan. However, what we've been told by the private agencies is that the majority of them already have significantly detailed diligent recruitment and retention plans. And so those are really encouraged to be shared widely, especially with key stakeholders such as the county DSSs. So this slide really concludes the brief overview of the Diligent Recruitment and Retention Plan. So before we move forward discussing the specifics of the Data Profile Program Planning tool, are there any specific questions related to the Diligent Recruitment Plan as a whole? And if there are, you can just put those in the chat pod and we will pull them out. Okay, so I'm seeing some people typing, but I'm not necessarily seeing questions coming through. So we will capture any questions that come in and potentially address those later. Okay, so let's talk about the data profile with the long name, the Diligent Recruitment and Retention Data Profile Program Planning Tool. Okay, so the basics. The Data Profile Program Planning tool really is just that. It's intended to be a tool that you utilize to take a comprehensive look at specific data points and then how they inform your diligent recruitment and retention. So all private agencies who license foster parents and all county DSSs have to use the Data Profile tool. Like I said earlier, it's required to be turned in annually, and that date that it'll be turned in every year is September 1st, and that begins September 1st, 2019. However, it's really truly not intended to be a reporting tool. That's kind of a secondary purpose. If we're going to be collecting this data, then let's report it up and look at it comprehensively. But again, it's a secondary benefit. So instead, really, the primary intention is for it to be a tool that you can use at your agency to inform your diligent recruitment and retention decisions from a data-educated perspective. So the original data profile tool was released in June with the Diligent Recruitment and Retention Plan. And then after getting some additional feedback following the release of that plan, we did realize that there were some gaps and discrepancies in what we had put in the tool. So for example, we needed a little bit more concrete direction on whether the data we were requesting was going to be longitudinal or point in time. We also got some feedback from the county DSSs that we really needed to take a look at and provide some insight into therapeutic homes and how many involved non-DSS placements in those therapeutic homes to grasp what the need truly was across the state. So what we did is we re-released a new and improved data profile, and that's when we also expanded the name from the data profile to the data profile program planning tool. Again, really because we just wanted to emphasize the use of the profile as a tool to inform your work rather than as only a reporting mechanism. We also recognize that the data profile tool doesn't necessarily capture everything that you could ever possibly want to know quantitatively about recruitment and retention. So to that end, we ask you to keep an open mind and also really encourage you to add to it as you see fit. So if in talking about your diligent recruitment and retention plan, there's additional data that would greatly impact your decision-making process, feel free to add it to this data profile tool as well. All right, so why do we need this data profile program planning tool? So in 2015 and 2016, we held statewide stakeholder meetings that we really used to inform the development of our statewide diligent recruitment and retention plan. I'm sure a lot of you who are calling in today might have been a part of those meetings or had colleagues who were a part of those meetings. And during those meetings, we talked a lot about data. We actually had agencies complete a data worksheet looking at the population of children in care and their foster parent population before they came to the meetings. And then we processed them during the meetings. And many of the line staff who attended really expressed surprise at what the data told them about their agency. So we had a few light bulb moments during that meeting, or during those meetings. And one I think that we can all identify with was the concept of turning away families who only want extremely young children, babies, 0 to 2-year-olds. So we actually had a county licensing worker who'd been in the role for many years who talked about how she always sends any families who call her and want to foster or adopt children under the age of 2, she always redirects them to private or domestic agencies because what her agency truly needs is homes for school-age children or teenagers. However, when she did this exercise, and she sat down and really looked at the data, what she saw was the number of children entering care between the ages of 0 to 2 was on a significant rise in her county. And she realized that this is a population she really does need homes for, and that she was consistently turning these homes away and directing them to other agencies. So from just doing that one exercise, she left that meeting saying that she planned going forward to really stop doing that and stop sending these families away and instead focus on licensing them to meet the needs in their county. So we'll talk more later about additional concrete examples for the way that you can use the profile to inform your plan. But for now, keep in mind that the data profile program planning tool is really just that, a planning tool. So moving forward, Lane is going to go into a much more detailed discussion of the tool itself. But at this point, are there any questions about what we've covered? All right, so I see one question. When is it due again? I assume we're talking about the data profile program planning tool. The reporting on that is not actually due until September. Yep, I'm correct, Nikidra. Thank you. The data profile program planning tool is not due to be turned in until September 1st, 2019, with really your first time starting to track that information being July 1st, 2018. However, we highly recommend that you start looking at it right now, start pulling out the data, work out any kinks or bugs that you have in pulling that data together so that come July 1st, 2018, you're not scrambling and finding issues and needing technical assistance. And so that's a perfect segue because now Lane is going to talk to us about exactly how you can access some of this data and some ideas about moving forward.
Okay, folks. Hey there, this is Lane, and I'm going to try to help you figure out some ways that you can easily populate the data profile program planning tool, regardless of whether or not you're with a county agency or with a private agency. So here on this slide, we've listed a few data points, pardon me, that are tracked via the new program planning tool. And I will probably use data profile and program planning tool interchangeably. So if I use either of those, just know that I'm talking about the same thing. So these data points will help, again, give you a little bit more of a comprehensive understanding of what the needs of your agency might be. They're not meant to be the be-all, end-all, and so if you look at that last bullet point, we really do want to encourage folks to think about optional data points that will help you and your particular agency come up with some diligent recruitment and retention strategies that are really suitable to the specific population of need that you're dealing with. But I'm going to talk today about the required data points and populating the tool with respect to those data points only. So first, I want to make some considerations for everyone, just to think about a couple of things that make the tool more useful than not, are really thinking about how to get the most accurate data sources. And in some cases, those data will come directly from your agency. I'm going to give you some examples today about data sources that you can access if you're with a county agency, or you can reach out to me if you're with a private agency, and I can help you fill in some of these blanks here, as it were. But it may turn out that you, in fact, have the same or better data at your agency. So think about what makes your reporting most accurate, as well as what is timely to the times that we're asking folks to report. So the program planning tool requires you to record numbers on a monthly basis. And some of the tools that we have available to us at the state don't quite always meet that kind of a tempo. So that's another consideration. You know, how can we provide the most timely sources of data in addition to accurate data? We also have data sources that are both, again, internal to your agency or that come from the state or other partners. So think about the kinds of folks who are keeping these data points, who you may partner with and work with. You may want to share notes with them when you're thinking about, well, okay, I'm going to go through and populate this tool, but is there a way that I can check my numbers? I may want to reach out to Lane at the state or to some other private agency partners to see if I really have a good feel as to what's going on. Finally, the reason why we're doing all of this, the reason why we're encouraging folks to turn in and populate the program planning tool is really so that we can be critical of the kinds of recruitment strategies and retention strategies that we're pushing for. And looking at data allows us to report and evaluate and reflect on whether or not those strategies are in fact needed or helpful, or the most effective and efficient strategies that we can come up with. Jamie gave the example earlier, and a few folks are mentioning this trend in children from 0 to 2. We're not going to talk about this specifically today, but I'm going to try to show you some sources that can help you and your own agency determine whether or not, there are shifts in the demographics, as it were, of the children that you're serving. And a few folks I see are mentioning one important data site already that we'll talk about a little bit later, the UNC Management Assistance website. Being cognizant of these resources can really be helpful because they allow you to know what is happening in your county and in your agencies. Yeah, perfect. Thanks for bringing that up, guys. So before we move on, I think we're going to do a polling question that will allow us to determine our level of confidence with populating the program planning tool. So you guys will see that here in just a moment, and if you wouldn't mind responding for me, just let me know at the outset here, how confident are you that your county is ready to start using this data profile program planning tool? And as those answers are coming in, so far they're right across the board. Got a little bit of clustering toward the middle here. Yeah, we are all over the map, it seems. 2 more seconds for folks to get in last responses. Okay, perfect. So this tells me that what we're going to do today should hopefully be helpful to folks. So as we're going through populating the tool, feel free to send your questions in. Even if we don't get to them all today, we will address them in the future. And that way we can make sure that we've met all of your questions and needs here. So hopefully you've seen the data profile program planning tool already. This is literally just a screenshot from my home computer that shows the program planning tool as it exists. And this will be the tool that you just go ahead and put your numbers into in Excel. Somebody is raising a question about NC Fast. We'll talk about that later on today. Please just give me a reminder if I haven't addressed it in time. I do want to talk a little bit about NC Fast considerations too. Most of the data I'll present today is coming, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So this is the program planning tool in any case that we're going to be talking about. And I'm going to break down the required data points on that left-hand column and talk about some existing sources of data for filling in those numbers. But this should be the program planning tool that y'all are familiar with. And the first data points I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to shoot back real quick so you can see they're just coming from that first chunk on the left-hand column A. I'm just going to break it down items by items here. So I want to talk to you a little bit about these data points, the total number of children in care, the races of children in care, the ethnicity of children in care, and then the ages of children in care that are grouped into these age categories, and show you some places where you can actually find this information. So we're talking just about the data points that are highlighted in these red boxes here. Some data sources you may already be familiar with include exporter reports. And I see folks are mentioning how they also do their own county accounting. And so we can talk about doing that in addition to utilizing some of these data sources. This exporter report can be found on XNet, and you may have folks who are going through sessions to obtain this information as well. But I want to mention this foster care fact sheet, which is the PQA report. This is really helpful to folks potentially at the county level, because this gives us county by county DSS data, as well as reported on a monthly tempo. So these are both the kinds of things that are required by the program planning tool, right? Reporting on a monthly level basis. So this report is really nice because it does that for you already. You can pull it up at the end of the month, and I'll just show you what it looks like here. Here, hold on just a sec here. Oh wait, no, maybe not. Did I click the wrong thing? Oh wait. Should I be sharing my screen? Sorry guys. Oh, just the next slide.
If you all can hang on just one sec, we're just having a little bit of technical difficulty. We're gonna get our slides back on track. And you can see John has said we're tracking questions. Right now I can see there's been some questions about where to get copies of the tool and where we can get data and so forth. So we'll be tracking those and answering those at the end of this section, okay?
Okay, so until we get back online, I'm going to show you a copy of this exporter report that I just mentioned, so I can point out a way that county agencies can populate the numbers of children, races of children, and the like here. My apologies, folks. We're just trying to determine. There we go. My screen went out, and now it's back up. Okay. Oh, maybe not. Okay. No. One more minute, folks. We're having technical difficulties again, just trying to get that next slide up.
Hey, everybody, we appreciate your patience. We'll be with you.
All right, folks, can you hear me? This is Lane. I'm back on. Hopefully you can hear me now. So we're going to look at this PQA 85 foster care fact sheet report. There we are. Okay, perfect. So this is just a screenshot again of what this report looks like if you're going in through XNet. And you should have somebody at your agency who looks at and utilizes these reports on a regular basis. If you don't, you can reach out to me and I can help you get there. But this report gives you an example of, you can see every county is going to be represented by their county number at the top. So here I've just displayed 41 through 60. And this report gives you the number of children who are currently in foster care as of the period of reporting. So this is the month ending 9/30/2017. This is but one image of a much longer report. As you read down on the left-hand side, this first column eventually will give you both the race categories, ethnicity categories, and the other data points that we mentioned previously. I'm going to go back just so we can all see them, and the ages of children in care by these categories. The one caveat that I have here is that ages of children in care are reported as 13 plus. This does not necessarily separately categorize children who are 18 and over. So this report isn't, again, it's not the be all end all. It's not going to do everything, absolutely everything that we need. But you'll be able to get race information, total number of children, as well as some of the age category numbers for your county merely by looking at this report on a monthly basis. So this is one example. And if folks have questions now, we can handle them as we go or just kind of collect them for the end. So I'm going to move on. Oh, here, and as well. So here's another tool that might be helpful to you to think about. You know, I'm looking at this report. I'm seeing placement authority numbers, and then a little bit lower on that column, I would see race numbers. These are the race codes that we're all familiar with, that we all use. Again, keep in mind that these exporter reports and their use will require knowledge of what these codes mean. So when I see race 01, I know that that's white, non-Hispanic, Latino. When I see race code 02, I know that that's a white, Hispanic, Latino identified child. So I put this up just for you to know that the names of the races won't be written in these exporter reports if you're not familiar with working with them. You'll need to be able to look at your county codes and your race codes in order to fully use them. Okay, our next set of data points, we're going to talk about the occupancy and capacity. And again, this is just a little bit further down in column A of your program planning tool. We're going to talk about how we can report out on a handful of these numbers of licensed beds and therapeutic beds. And again, we're going to be using a data source that comes from the same resource, exporter. In addition, there's a second report that's a PQA report, but I want to focus on this first, on the FCF 421-1 exporter report, which is the Family Foster Homes report. Again, we like these data because they're reported monthly. So at the end of the month, you can just go ahead and check them out and fill in your numbers. The PQA 116-1 is a way for you to do some checking and accounting on the results of that 421-1. So let me show you the 421. And this is what the 421-1 looks like. I have chosen Bertie County as an example because everything fit nicely on one screen. So that was really helpful. So as you can see, this is a really helpful report because it gives you a facility ID number. We can use that to cross-reference information about facilities with other reports. We also have an agency code, which tells us if that's a bed that is a private agency bed or not, right? So the absence of an agency code means that it's a Bertie County DSS licensed home. You'll see capacity, and that's the max capacity of that home. The next line over is the total number of clients who are in that home during that processing month. So again, I've pulled a report from the end of September. And what's really helpful to us is that we can house by house kind of look and see how many beds are being utilized or not. But then you'll see we also have subtotals that differentiate therapeutic and non-therapeutic, both county and private agency placements. So here's an example of a report that even though counties can't access, that provides important private agencies can't access through XNet. They still provide important private agency-centric information. So it might be important for agencies to reach out as a check to their own accounting and their own numbers keeping, or as a way to encourage county and private agency collaboration to say, hey, this is what our numbers are looking like. This is what we see your numbers are looking like. Let's just have a conversation about whether or not that seems accurate and share that information with each other. So I really like the 421-1. There's just a few data points. They're really easy to read, and it really provides an important view. I'm going to scroll back for just a second here into the total number of licensed beds and therapeutic beds, the resources that they come from, be they public or private agency, and the licensed beds that are actually not being used during the month, which I think is a really valuable data point for folks as well. And then I'm going to scroll forward. The second report that might be pertinent to helping think through filling in these particular data points. And again, I just saw a comment. Private agencies cannot access this exporter report, but I am more than happy to run them and share them with you. And my contact information will be available to you all. Feel free to reach out. It is very easy for me to run and share this information with you. So I'm more than happy to do that. For private agencies in particular. Of course, public agencies, you're happy to reach out to me too, and I'm more than happy and willing to work with you. So the next report, this PQA 116-1, is a much more detailed version almost of the prior report, because this actually gives you line-by-line placements by facility, again, for a particular period. And you'll see, if you can look kind of in the middle of this report, looking at placements by facility for the period of time 11/1 through 11/20. So this isn't quite on a monthly basis, as it were, but it gives you a sense of whether or not there were folks placed in homes or not, by home, by county. And as you can see, it's got 529 pages. It's a very long report because it goes through county by county, placement by placement. What is the facility name? What are the ages they accept? The sexes they accept? So on and so forth. What's their capacity? And were there placements for them during this period of time? So you can use this to try to triangulate the previous report's information. Okay, so I've told you a bit about what we can use data for. Unfortunately, there are a lot of data points on our program planning tool right now for which we do not have reporting capability. And I want to talk a little bit about NC-FAST again, don't let me forget. But one really fun thing that I'm excited to announce, that I'm glad to announce, is that here is one of those agency-only tracking points that we will have a report for in the very near future. So up until very recently, we did not have a report that covered the races of licensed families and ethnicity of licensed families. And you'll see that's a little bit further down in column A on your program planning tool. It can be really helpful to know the races and ethnicities of your licensed families so that you can meet the needs of your children. And we will have an exporter report that we didn't have before that will be reported monthly, again, to give us data that we need to fill this program planning tool in. We will have this available for counties starting the end of this month, December 31. We are going to have our very first report available to counties by county. And at the end of January, I'm told we will have the same for private agencies. And so again, I'm more than happy to run those reports and provide access to agencies. They can reach out to me and I can make sure to get that information to them. But counties will be able to run their very own exporter reports and obtain this really important information. So for the time being, just sit tight. By the time you will be tasked with reporting starting in July of next year, you'll already have had a chance to be looking at these reports on a monthly basis. And so I'm really excited to present that to you all as an option. Now I'm going to unfortunately move on to those points for which agencies will be the only source of information. So I'm going to bring these up all so that we can see them together. And these are all required data points that the agency themselves will have to track, because we don't have a report that can do this at current capacity. So I just want to point out that this means trying to figure out our sibling groups in care. I know this is something that a lot of folks end up hand counting or have a really good system for keeping track of at their own agency. We're going to encourage you to continue to do that, especially for the time being into the next year. And this is a really important issue, trying to track sibling groups based on placement dates or last names. Or, we know that it's really hard to do this after the fact. So please continue to track your sibling groups in care. We also have some required data points regarding therapeutic needs. So keeping track of those children who have therapeutic needs, who are in and are not in DSS custody. That's something that is very important as well as the number of children who are placed out of the county because of a lack of families or experienced disruptions in placement changes, as well as the average length of time from inquiry to licensure. We don't have reports for all of those items as of yet, so we do encourage you to make sure that you can track them at the county level and are tracking them at the county level. Of course, we are more than happy to help you triangulate around a strategy for doing so as well, and there may be some tools available that we can help you do that. I see a couple of questions coming up, and in the interest of time, I'm going to just shoot through and handle questions a little bit later, but I am looking and tracking what folks are asking as well. I only have really one more slide to present, so I want to make sure I do address private agencies in particular. I know we are unable to access XNet and get a hold of these exporter reports, but I do want to emphasize for the purposes of both public and private agencies that we do have a lot of sources of data that do give us private agency information and could be helpful to private agencies to know about. And I offer one such report. This is a report that is a foster care inventory of facilities that differentiates by facility name for every private agency and groups all of their facilities together. So if you're a private agency and you really want to touch base and compare the capacities and the other details of the facilities that you license, if you want to compare notes with what we are producing in these reports and do some accounting, then I'm more than happy to link up with you and make these reports available. And for counties, it might be helpful for county DSS agencies to see, here are the facilities that are in our county that are licensed by private agencies, and to kind of know, what is out there as well as what's being licensed at the county DSS level. So let me, yes, perfect. So we've got a couple of questions. I'm going to scan back to and get onto my questions screen here. So we're looking at first question. So yes, so if these reports are only available to DSS agencies, this is a great question, right? How can private agencies be made aware of current trends? I encourage folks to definitely reach out to me and to certainly reach out to your county partner in order to try to triangulate and share resources and information. Of course, the program planning tool, the data profile, is going to be centric to your own particular agency. But as we know, we're working with children, the same children in counties, and so we should be sharing information and comparing information to say, hey, I'm working with this county DSS. These are the demographics of my kids, and these are the demographics of the licensed parents that I've got. Here, let's look to our partner private agencies and see, are they filling in the gaps that we have, and vice versa. So I encourage folks to both reach out to me so that I can supply you with the reports and data that are available. But just as much, I encourage private agencies and public agencies to compare notes and to share data and information. Again, while you're reporting on your own agency's action, you can be in conversation with each other. Let me see what other questions that we have. Shortage of foster homes, keeping up with the number of children having to be placed right outside of the resident county. This is an extremely important data point and not something that we are able to track at the state level. So this is why this data point is on the program planning tool. This is tremendously important, and as somebody who works with data on a regular basis, these are things that we need to know, and we're going to rely on agencies to know. When can you not place kids, and where do those kids go? How often are you having to place them outside of your agency or outside of your county? And those are things that are on the program planning tool for this reason, because we don't have a way to currently track this data point. So that's an excellent, excellent question. Another question, how do we track the number of children labeled as therapeutic who are not in DSS custody? I'm going to pass to Jamie because she's going to handle this particular question.
So absolutely, what we're asking there is we're actually asking for private agencies who have non-DSS children placed in their privately licensed therapeutic homes to report on those children. Because right now there's no mechanism to look at the number of therapeutic foster homes we have and how many beds are taken up by DSS children versus non-DSS children. And so this will give us our first look at that. So if we had, as an example, I know this is not a correct number, but if we had 100 therapeutic homes in North Carolina and we needed 50 of them for DSS children, well, if we just look at those two data points, then we'd say, oh, we have plenty of therapeutic homes for our kids. But what if 75 of those homes or those beds are taken up by non-DSS children? Then we're missing 25 homes at a minimum that we would need for DSS kids. So that's why we want to start looking at those things. So the county DSSs are not required to report on the non-DSS kids. That's for the private therapeutic foster care agencies.
Okay, guys, this is Lane back here, and I'm going to answer. I've got one more question sitting here on the on my screen that we're talking about the number of children within the month placed. Are we asking for the total number of children who are placed out of the county, or just new ones placed out during that specific month? And this is why we're asking folks to track on a monthly basis, because we want to know how many emergent new cases are happening, and also during what period of time. That way we know what's happening not only on a monthly basis, but maybe there's a particular timing issue or important issue with the calendar month and timing over the year that folks might want to be aware of. There might be a more acute need at a particular time in the year because of some backup caused by having to place more children at a particular time. So yes, we do want folks to, when you're kind of starting out, on that first month, right, tell us how many kids you've got placed out of the county, and then every subsequent month, go ahead and report those new cases as well. And if you have questions about how to do that and you would like me to clarify, I'm more than happy to provide additional TA moving forward. But yes, we want to get a sense of the kind of new and emergent needs that we're having to meet by placing kids outside of the county. I'm going to give it a sec for any more questions, and while I'm waiting, oh.
More that John has put in there. So if you want to go ahead and answer the ones that
Okay, I'm back. Okay, so I'm reading through Kim's question, and Kim's question is, if you have homes licensed through your local DSS, but are located in a neighboring county, does that count as out-of-county placement even though the home is licensed and managed through the child's home county? That's a great question. I'm going to defer to, I'm going to defer to Jamie ultimately, but I think this is a great question. Out of county placement, even though the home, so as a data person, I'm thinking if the home is licensed by your county, then it is not an out of county placement, even though technically it is an out of county placement.
Right.
That's where I'm going to fall. I'm going to let other people weigh in here. That's my interpretation.
So we weren't able to take the data profile and cover every potential possibility for all of the realm of possibilities we deal with. We all know that our work isn't stagnant, it's not black and white, and we have these situations come up. So really what we were trying to get at there is that we wanted to know how many kids had to leave their home community because we did not have adequate placement in the county. You know, if the child is just across the county line, but technically still really in their home community, going to their same school, attending their same church, coming to the same community events, then you may not consider that truly an out-of-county placement. I would say that if there's a county that has a significant amount of homes where this would be an issue, you consider adding another data tracking point that you could look at to really say, well, these are children who are technically placed outside of the county, but we consider them to be a part of the community. Okay. Yes. So Laura just asked as a follow-up question if notes could be included in the profile when they submit. Absolutely. Yes. This is your tool. You know, really what we're doing is, because everyone's going to be utilizing it, then let's take that information and put it into a cumulative format at the state level, because we've got it and we can report it back out. But this is your tool, and there's actually a section for notes to the far right. If you look at the data profile program planning tool, utilize it, add to it, use whatever aspect you need to clarify maybe a discrepancy in your data or why you're tracking something a certain way. And then I see one more question.
Yep, that one from Frank.
Yep, from Frank. Yep, so is there any state database that tracks children and families that move from one county to another within the state so that their history contact with DSS can be obtained? Well, that's NC Fast.
Well, there is an NC Fast question at the very, very top.
Lane, did you want to describe anything else about that to answer that question?
Yeah, so there is a comment about obtaining information. So counties who are currently in NC Fast, so the 5 pilot counties who are currently the NC Fast pilot counties, and the only 5 for whom we're reporting in NC Fast, we are currently working on how to report out on those counties. So yes, the comment about not having accurate information, that is something that we are literally, when I go home today, I'm going to continue to help troubleshoot. For the time being, if you're in those 5 pilot counties and you have questions, please reach out to me. And there are 2 people on my team who are working with NC Fast on a weekly basis. So I will make sure that we get you the best and most up-to-date information that we can. But please know that this is an emergent issue, and is a current issue, and that we've got a directive to handle this reporting out NC Fast data situation. This is the highest priority right now. And whatever we can obtain for you to help, we absolutely will. But also coming to NC Fast with concrete questions and concrete limitations has been very helpful for them so that they can fix things to get us up to speed before the next counties roll out. So please reach out to me with, if you're in NC Fast County and are having reporting issues and have questions about NC Fast and data in NC Fast. Everybody else, good news, everything is still status quo. So as you get rolled into NC Fast, we're hoping that we can fix any issues right now for the future counties as they roll out, and that they won't be they will no longer be an issue. The other caveat that I have and will say, to lean on Exporter right now as your resource, we do have some Exporter reports available for the NC Fast counties. So if you're used to working in Data Warehouse, we may have a workaround that comes through Exporter just for the time being. But again, it's really helpful to contact me and to give very concrete and direct questions about what you're trying to obtain. And then that way, if we can't find it for you and produce it for you, then we can go to NC Fast and say, hey, this is what counties need, this is what we need. And that helps them, those concrete questions really help the folks at NC Fast figure out what they need to be doing. So that's my caveat about NC Fast. Please let me know, again, if you have any questions. My contact information will be available, and I will put you in touch as well with the 2 people on my team who work with NC Fast on a weekly basis. Okay,
Great.
so
So I was just saying thank you so much, Lane, for answering all those questions. And as I said, John is continuing to track questions, which we will follow up in the follow-up document. We are going to pass it now back to Jamie, who's going to talk a little bit about some concrete examples of how this information can be useful to you as a tool. So take it away, Jamie.
All right, due to my technical difficulties a little bit earlier, I had to switch seats, so let me just catch up in my notes questions, or excuse me, in my notes. All right. So thank you everyone for being so engaged. These are great questions. Just also a friendly reminder that we always send out a follow-up document after the event that will address all of these questions formally. So if any additional questions come in, feel free to, or if you have any additional questions, feel free to send them in. And if we don't respond to them today, it'll be in the follow-up document as well. All right, so let's talk about data use strategies and successes. So you've tracked all of this data and you have it and you're looking at it, and now what do you do with it? How do you utilize it to inform the work that you're doing? So let's go back to that example of recruiting for children ages 0 to 2. We've all got our routines and our standard responses. As a former licensing supervisor, I know I kind of had my standard spiel for when families would call and say, hi, I'm interested in becoming a foster parent, and you have your script that you follow. But the reality is that oftentimes we typically don't realize that a trend is occurring until after it's already been happening for a while. And so we have our perception of current needs versus actuality. Sometimes they might be closely aligned and sometimes they're not. But by utilizing quantitative data to inform our work, combined with our qualitative assessment of a current situation, what we're ultimately going to be able to do utilizing this data is to really take the uncertainty and guesswork out of our decision making and our actions, which ultimately allows us to make far more efficient and effective use of the limited resources that I know that we're all dealing with. So rather than doing a lot of activities to achieve one result, we may be able to target our work, expend less energy and effort, and ultimately see better results. So what we did in preparation for this webinar was to reach out to both some private and county DSS agencies to gather concrete examples of how they currently use data to inform their day-to-day diligent recruitment work. Methodist Home for Children and Catawba County DSS, who are both members of the Diligent Recruitment Plan PIP work group and helped to write the Diligent Recruitment and Retention Plan, provided us with some really concrete examples of ways that they currently use data. So let's share those. So Methodist Home for Children tracks all of their placement intake calls that they receive in regards to counties who need placement for children, as well as private community citizens who may need placement for therapeutic needs. And they then use that data to see what counties are sending them referrals for placement, if they're for regular foster care, therapeutic foster care, or adoption. And then ultimately that helps them to kind of see the lay of the land and where the geographic and programmatic needs are. So at the end of that month, they have all of that data to review. And what happens is their licensing supervisor then takes all that intake data to determine what types of children they are struggling to place in their homes. So for example, the intake worker reviews with the licensing supervisor maybe that there's data to support they need more homes for teens or more homes for large sibling groups. And it gives them a picture of the characteristics of the children that they may be unable to place, and then helps them target their recruitment efforts to meet the needs of the agencies making referrals and the children that they were unable to serve. They've also used data to target recruitment around the characteristics of successful families, which is a really interesting approach. So for example, as they continue to seek out therapeutic homes and emergency care homes, Methodist staff actually sat down and took a look at the homes that they have currently that they feel really do a great job providing these services. And then they tried to find some common links between all of them. So for example, was it their flexibility? Was it their work schedule? Maybe their experience in working with youth, what they do for a living, the components of their support system, different characteristics like that. And then what they did is they found commonalities, and they were able to really focus in on the types of homes they look for and seek out. So they found that a lot of those homes either had retired parents or parents that worked in the helping professions, either in medical, mental health, education, social workers, professions like that. And they said that they'd always really assumed that link, but it helped to have it quantitatively confirmed for them. So now what it does is it drives them to really focus in their recruitment in those places. So one of the other things they know, and that we all know, is that one of the best ways to find homes is really to use your current licensed foster families to do the recruitment. So what they've done is they take those homes that are performing really well, who work in the helping professions, and then ask them to do some recruitment for new foster and adoptive families within their own professional network, hoping that ultimately that'll increase the likelihood of licensing families who have a parent in the helping profession, and then potentially provide better outcomes for the families and children involved in the system. Methodist Home for Children also uses data to drive what recruitment strategies that they use and where. So for example, they recently noticed, while tracking how people hear about their agency, that there's a really big difference in the response to that question in the two major metro areas that they serve. So their two big hubs at the moment are the Triangle and Greenville. And even though there's only about a 60-mile difference between the two, they found that some activities worked better for recruiting in one area than the other. So they find that they tend to have more success in the Triangle using social media and community events, but then in Greenville, some of the more quote-unquote old-fashioned techniques tend to work a little bit better. So there they focus in on public service announcements, newspaper ads, and putting signs out at different partnering businesses. And so they're able to presume that the difference is because they do tend to have an older age range of foster parents in the Greenville area. But regardless of why, now they know to really put their efforts into specific recruitment activities in specific geographic areas. All right, so let's talk about Catawba County DSS. They also shared with us some great ways that they currently use data to drive their diligent recruitment and retention work. So about 2 years ago, they actually completed a map of Catawba County that showed the areas where kids were coming into care, and then also pinpointed where their foster and adoptive families lived. What that did was allow them to identify where within the community they really needed to focus their recruitment on key geographical areas in the county. Because if all of your children are coming into care in the southern part of the county and all of your foster homes are in the northern part of the county, are you truly still keeping that child in their home community? There can be stark cultural and geographic differences between one portion of a county to another. Their licensing worker also keeps data on referral sources for everyone who comes to their informational meetings. So she knows that the top referral sources in Catawba are their Catawba County website and their Facebook page. So then she makes a really strong effort to make sure that those are up to date and that she's constantly updating them and keeping them relevant and active because they're her most likely source of referrals. And then recently she took it another step further and she pulled out of all of her referral sources all of the families who actually completed the licensure process and became licensed to see what their original referral sources actually were. And through that, she discovered that the families who had success and completed licensure were actually more likely to be referred by a church member or a family or friend to contact the agency. And so because of that, she was then able to advocate and start an incentive program where she incentivizes current foster and adoptive families around word-of-mouth referrals. And as new families get licensed, then the current family gets an incentive payment as well. Another thing that she talked about doing was using statistics from data on children in care in the county and licensed families in the county to make her Facebook posts really central to the local needs and to educate the community while also pulling at the heartstrings, because that's the reality of what we do, is we have to express the need so that families become invested in the process. So by utilizing her local data, she finds that it has much more of an impact than utilizing statewide data. And that's because really our prospective foster and adoptive families can relate to and recognize that there might be children in need in their own town, their own neighborhood, their school district, not just be able to rationalize that this isn't going on in my community and it's somewhere else across the state. And so that's another great way to use your data. So thank you so much to both Catawba DSS and Methodist Home for Children for providing us with some great examples. And then we also just have some additional examples we've heard from different county DSSs and public agencies. So data is always going to assist you in justifying your decision making or requesting new resources from your executive management team. So consider utilizing the data in that way. It also can obviously help you target specific needs of children or populations of foster parents, and then can ultimately help you use your time more efficiently because you're targeting in your recruitment activities on the populations where you desperately need more homes. For example, it can also help you to really use your resources more efficiently. So for example, if you pay a staff member comp time to go and man an information table at Walmart 2 Saturdays out of the month, ultimately you want to know if that's a really good use of that individual's time and resources and the county's resources. Maybe the comp time that you're paying that individual could be better served by putting up flyers in specific portions of your community. So you can align your resources ultimately with your successes. And really, the data can get you the biggest bang for your buck. So ultimately, we can use the data to find out how best to recruit and retain our foster and adoptive parents, and then also how to identify foster and adoptive parents who can ultimately meet the needs of the children that we serve, all through the use of our data.
Okay, this is Laura again. So thanks, Jamie. Before we take any more questions, we wanted to just do our poll again just to see where you're all at now. So John's going to pull up the poll with the same questions we asked before. Based upon what you've heard today in the webinar, how confident are you feeling now about being ready to start the data profile, with 1 being not at all confident and 10 being completely confident? So we'll give you guys a minute to do that, and then we'll take a look and see where we're at. Okay, just a few more seconds to give us your answer. You should all be able to see the results up there on the screen as well. All right, thank you guys for doing that poll. It looks like we've moved a little bit towards more confidence, getting ready to use the data profile. And again, you know, the idea is to practice as much and start working with it as much as you can now, so that you'll have that confidence that you need when it's time to start, it's required to be submitting it. So now we're going to pause for any additional questions that you have. It looks like we have one here from Alamance County. Do you want to take that, Jamie?
Sure. So the question is regarding incentives. Can this be paid out of the Adoption Promotion Fund, or does it have to come from a county line item? So if you utilize Adoption Promotion Program funds, then yes, an incentive program could be a very appropriate use of that funding. All of the funds are to be used to advance your adoption program and enhance it. So if this is a way to advance and enhance your adoption program, then that would be a very appropriate use of the funds.
All right, so we're going to take a moment here. If you have any other additional questions, please type those into the chat pod right now. We're going to do our best to answer them if we have time before we end this morning, and then we'll capture the rest of them for our follow-up document. So I see we have a couple people typing, so let's just wait for those questions. Let's see.
I see C. Wells talks about most of our adoptions come from our licensed foster parents, and that's something that we hear very regularly. So consider your adoption promotion funds and how that interacts with your licensure of foster and adoptive homes. Another question is, where is the Diligent Recruitment and Retention Data Profile Program Planning Tool located? Thank you, Sherry, for using the full name. That's great. So it is located currently on the DHHS Publications website. We will make sure that there is a link to that in the follow-up document, but it is available publicly along with the entire plan, the resource guide, and the template for counties to utilize. There was also a Dear County Director letter that was issued in June listing that location, as well as a Dear County Director letter and Dear Executive Director letter for the private agencies in June, and then there was another one issued in October that gave the location as well for the updated data profile program planning tool. Thanks, John. John just threw out the publications page as well for everyone to utilize.
Thanks, Jamie. All right, any additional questions that we can address at this time? All right. So we want to take a moment to hear from you. So you can go ahead and type an answer into the chat pod. So if you have an example right now of how your agency has used data to direct your diligent recruiting efforts, we'd like to hear about that from you. So go ahead and type your thoughts into the chat pod, and we'll see how many of them we can address. See, we've got quite a few people typing, so thank you all so much for that. Just waiting for a couple of our answers to come up here. I guess you guys have a lot to say, so that's awesome. While we're waiting, I can just let y'all know that earlier in the webinar, there was a participant who mentioned that the links on the handouts were not live. So while we've been talking, John went in and fixed those. So you can download the handout, re-download the handout from the file share pod that John has just dragged over in front of the screen. So you should be able to see that. And those links will now be live. All right, Jamie, you want to cover some of the things people are saying in the chat pod?
Absolutely. So we've got folks who ask their interested potential foster parents how they hear about the fostering program. Absolutely. You don't want to continue to invest in recruitment efforts that aren't getting you phone calls and aren't getting you interest. Let's see. Jonathan talked about, we also used to refer families interested in younger children away until looking at our data helped us realize we have an increasing need for them. Absolutely. Many people attribute this increase in the number of younger children coming into care to the opioid crisis. I don't have any data to show that, but I think it's a trend that many of us are seeing and need to account for, when historically those haven't been the families that we're really focused on. T-shirts, handouts, pamphlets, classes, so utilizing data to drive what recruitment methods again. Tracking how far folks go in the process. Correct. Just because someone calls doesn't mean that they actually end up. So looking at how successful your families are. Let's see. Micah talked about they had a town meeting with stakeholders about diligent recruitment, and they shared their data on their current foster parent population compared to the data on their current pool of foster parents, and it was really the best place to start. Helped to keep their stakeholders very interested in the information. Also talked about that they have many children of Hispanic origin in care and 0 foster parents, and talked about those disconnects and really helped them to begin the conversation about what the needs are in their community. Absolutely, that's a great way to utilize your data to just start a conversation. Let's see. Yep, referral logs. Focusing in on current foster parents recruiting. We hear that all the time, that a lot of agencies, when they drill down their data, those are their best recruiters, are their current foster parents. And so really putting some effort around that can be important. Knowing that their local churches, especially the ones where the foster families attend, are a good source of recruitment. It can help you to focus in on your partnership with the faith community. Absolutely. Ursula talked about they have a foster parent webpage where they share their experiences, and then they can work with local organizations. Absolutely as well. These are great. These are wonderful ways that you all are already using data to inform your diligent recruitment work and can build on. And I think it's also really important to say that we all recognize we're at a starting point. And so if you don't currently use your data to drive your diligent recruitment, that's okay. We're in a space where we are all trying something new, and we are focusing in on this and giving it attention for the first time, and really starting that conversation and just starting to build capacity to utilize data is a perfectly adequate beginning first step. I do not have a time frame. I think that's something that we can research and potentially include in the follow-up document. Okay.
Sorry about that. I was talking to you without my mute off. So just want to make sure you can still see that the file pod is up, the file share pod is up there. We'll keep it up there so that you can download those handouts with the live links for resources. And as both Jamie and Lane mentioned, here's their contact information. So again, Lane has very generously offered lots and lots of assistance to anyone who has specific needs, reports they're struggling with, to contact her. So you can see her email there at the bottom of the screen, and then we have Jamie's contact information up at the top. So as you can definitely tell from the both of them, this is something they're really passionate about and absolutely are wanting to hear from you if you're needing assistance.